Good morning and happy Good Friday, happy Passover, happy Easter for all who are celebrating this weekend. It's a very holy time this week for Christians and Jews all over the world. And I was going to do quite a different show, but because of what happened on Monday with the Notre Dame, I have to comment. I just have to. First of all, the fact that in America a church burning in France took over all of the programming. They interrupted daily programming to tell us that the Notre Dame was on fire. And yeah, okay, I get it, but I think what they should have done, especially because of what occurred later, they should have just put a ticker along the regular programming. There's a fire at the Notre Dame, updates at nightly news at 6:30, because what happened was all over Facebook and the reporters who were interrupting daily programming and saying the Notre Dame is on fire, they all jumped to a conclusion. It's Holy Week, the beginning of Holy Week for Christians. The Notre Dame is a very famous Christian Catholic site. It had to be terrorism. Blame the Muslims right away. It was an attack on Christianity, except it wasn't. And this is the problem with this 24/7 news thing, is that they show you the picture because you need to see it, you have to see it, and then they kind of assume things. And you know what happens when you assume? Remember, ass out of you and me. And these reporters, even on Facebook, it was Muslims, oh, they're attacking Christianity, they're attacking Easter. Well, guess what? By 6:30 on Monday night, we knew it was not an act of terrorism. It was not an attack on Christianity. It was an accident. The Notre Dame was being renovated and a contractor did something stupid. It was an act of God, right? It was an act of God. So, again, there's people in the streets, they're crying, there's tributes pouring in for the iconic church. Why aren't we just grateful that no one was seriously injured? That nobody lives at the Notre Dame? You know, every day we see these horrific stories of people who lost lives, lost their homes in hurricanes, other acts of God, tornadoes. 2 young boys were just killed in a tornado. No one was killed and no one was seriously injured in the Notre Dame fire. We should be grateful. And yet tributes pouring in for iconic church. It's a building. Okay? And for those of you who are going to yell at me for this, I'm sorry. Buildings don't feel pain. Okay? The building isn't suffering. The building can be rebuilt. Yes, it's historic. Yes, it's sad if it's destroyed. But I got to tell you something. The way that some Christians are reacting and they're crying over this building, it makes me wonder. It does. Last week, 3 Louisiana churches were purposely set on fire. That was an act of racial terrorism. The guy did it because they were mostly black churches and he doesn't like black people. That was arson. And you know what the pastor said, and I really appreciated it? He said, oh, well, yeah, they destroyed the building, but they didn't destroy the church. The church isn't the building. The church is the people, the congregation, and we're still here. So they couldn't hurt the church. They just hurt the building, and buildings don't feel pain. Okay? And since this is Easter, and I like Easter. I like the story of Jesus and the Passover and Palm Sunday, and I have the DVD. I love it with Jeremy Sisto. It's a beautiful story. And the fact is that Jesus never preached in a church. He never charged people to hear his word. Okay? When Judas Iscariot tried to collect money from the people to hear Jesus' word or to get a miracle, to be healed by Jesus. Jesus threw the coins in the river, remember? He said, no one pays to hear the word of my Father. So I have to ask, when did hearing the word of God become a business? Because it is a business. There is a movie that I think you all should watch. It's called Stigmata. It's an older movie. It's really, really good. I think one of the Arquette sisters is in it. And it's about this hidden part of the Bible that Jesus actually wrote himself. And in the movie, the Catholic Church lost their minds. They wanted this book buried. They didn't want anyone to read it because what it said was, pick up a rock and I am there. I am in the blade of grass you walk on. I am in the sand under your feet. Basically, what Jesus was saying in this hidden book was, you can talk to me and worship me anywhere. And the church didn't like that, the Catholic Church, because that would mean that people would think they didn't have to go to church. And if they didn't come to church, they wouldn't be paying. How many of you go to a church where they don't pass a basket or ask for dues to be a member of the church? Jesus didn't do that. He didn't. He didn't want to be paid for people hearing his word. So think about that. When did the church become a business? And a tax-exempt business at that. They don't pay taxes. If you're a church, you don't pay taxes. Try living in a town where there is a church on every corner and your real estate taxes for your house are sky high. Because all this real estate taken up by these huge churches with their big stained glass windows and their fancy pictures and all that stuff, they take up all this real estate and they don't pay one dime in real estate taxes or school taxes. They pay nothing to the community. But boy, they collect. There is one church that actually sends you a bill every quarter for your dues. If you don't pay your dues, you don't get baptized, you don't get married, you don't get buried, you don't get communion, you get nothing. You got to pay. Because to them, you're only a good Christian if you come to the four walls of the church. The fancy stained glass windows, the fancy icons. That's not what Jesus wanted for his ministry. Jesus didn't care about any of that. And I have to wonder, when people are crying over this church, why? Because it's a building. You're going to say to me, well, you're not a Christian. And I'm going to say, well, I'll be really honest with you. I think I'm a better Christian than you are. If the only time you feel you can talk to God is when you're in a church you're paying to go to. See, if I want to hear the word of God, I open a Bible and I read it. And I interpret it because I'm a smart girl. I don't want to go into a church and hear someone who's getting paid for the privilege and then his agenda or her agenda interpreting the Bible for me. I don't like people reading stories to me, reading books to me. I want to read it for myself and take from it what my mind interprets it to be. I don't need the Bible interpreted to me by someone with their own agenda and their own personal prejudices and beliefs put into it. Going to church every Sunday doesn't make you a good Christian. Going to church on Christmas and Easter doesn't make you okay with God. It doesn't. The churches are packed. Christmas Eve and Easter. Everyone goes to church. But do they really want to be there, or are they just there because they're supposed to be? I'll tell you a funny story about when I was growing up. And we went to this church, and it was a long service. Sunday school started at 10. The liturgy 10:30 to noon, and that's if the priest did a short sermon. Sometimes it went till 12:30, depending on the sermon. And it was always funny to me that every week the priest would say something about, don't just drop your children off for Sunday school and show up later. That was kind of his admonition to the parishioners. And yet, one family in particular, a lot of families dropped the kids off, went to the diner for breakfast, and showed up, at the end of the service, but they sat in the back. This one family, very wealthy family, big donors to the church, they showed up just in time for Holy Communion, which was around 11:30. Remember, church started at 10:30, right? 11:20, in they would walk. They would parade to the front of the church, make everybody move, and get that front pew because they needed to be seen. Dressed to the nines, plenty of jewelry and diamonds and makeup and full hair. And no one said a word because they were big donors. They donated a lot of money. And they got away with that. Funny thing is, in the church that I went to, you had a fast before you took communion. And yet so many people went over to that diner. Pancakes, waffles, bacon, eggs. Come in just in time, walk up the aisle. Some people would walk up the aisle for communion and then walk back up the aisle and right out the doors. I actually did that a couple times because we didn't want to sit around and listen to the priest speak for 45 minutes because whatever he said was usually about money or whatever. Nothing important, nothing for us to take away with. So oftentimes I would go to church, stay for the liturgy, stay for the communion, and go right from communion right out the front door to my car and go home. Because I didn't want to hear what the priest had to say. I liked the tradition of the liturgy. I didn't want to hear the priest because whatever he said, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't care. He didn't move me. So again, a building is not the church. And what is it that we have in this country where we love sitting in the safety of our homes, on our sofas, and watching tragedy? This show has never gotten 1 million views on YouTube. You know what gets 1 million views on YouTube? That gymnast who broke both of her legs, and it's a horrific video. That has been shared millions of times. We sit on our sofas and we watch other people's houses destroyed by hurricanes. We watched 9/11. We watched people jumping out of buildings. We watched those planes going into the Twin Towers over and over again. Why? What is our obsession with watching others' tragedies? And again, the Notre Dame is not a tragedy. It's not. It's a building. No one was harmed. You can rebuild the building. You can't bring back dead people. At least not yet. Not the time of the... Nope. Someone who is dead is lost forever. If the Twin Towers had been blown up on 9/11 and no one had been in them and no one had been killed, I would have been sad. I would have been angry that a terrorist came onto our soil and blew up the Twin Towers. But if nobody died, I would not have shed one tear. Because they can be rebuilt. It's a building. And buildings don't feel pain. I don't like the fact that we automatically blamed Muslims for the Notre Dame fire. That's not fair. And I don't like this constant Christian belief that there is a war against Christianity. If anything, Christians are at war with those of us who don't happen to share their beliefs. They want to force us to share their beliefs. They want to recruit us. They want to force us. They believe that they can say that discrimination against gay people who they've never met is fine because their Bible tells them so. It's none of their business. They say it's okay to blow up an abortion clinic and kill innocent people in the name of Christianity. when they don't know those people and those people don't share their beliefs. You cannot force someone to live as you live. So when people tell me that I criticize your faith, I do not. I respect your faith and your right to live your faith. Your right. What you don't have the right to do is force me to live your faith. Because the way I live my life is not your problem. Okay? That's where when I get asked, do you believe in God? Yes, I do believe in God. I absolutely believe in God because I blame him for everything that goes wrong in my life, which is interesting because, see, you're not allowed to do that, right? This is always a conundrum with me. I am supposed to thank God because I have a house, thank God because I have food on the table, thank God because my husband has a job. But if my husband loses his job or we lose our house, I'm not allowed to blame God. Boy, God has a good job, doesn't he? I've said this often. I've done it in comedy routines. I would love to have God's job. The only other job I'd rather have other than God is a meteorologist because you can be wrong 80% of the time and still get paid. God only gets the credit, never the blame. I would love that. That's a good job, isn't it? Where when things go right, you are thanked and praised, and if things go wrong, it's not your fault. See, I don't understand that. I've never understood that. If God is responsible for the good things in my life, why is he not responsible for the bad stuff in my life? So yes, I do believe in God. I believe in something bigger. But here's my other thing, is I know that a lot of my Christian friends, they say this, and we had a conversation, a really good one, is that a lot of Christians choose to believe because it gets them through their life, their hard lives. And life is hard. It's a lot of hard work. Bad things will happen. That you can be guaranteed. Bad things are going to happen to you. And they all say, well, we have something to look forward to, heaven. Are you sure? Again, I'm not disrespecting here. What I am saying is, look, I know there is suffering right here. I know it's hard work to just get through every single day. I truly don't have time to worry about what might happen to me when I die, where I'm going, if I'm going anywhere. Because I know the bad shit happens. I see it every day. I know good people suffer. I know bad things happen. But I've never got an email from heaven telling me, hey, it's really cool up here. Can't wait till you get here. I've never gotten an email from hell either. Well, it's a little hot, but we're having a lot more fun than they're having in heaven. Can't wait to see you. So I'm a doubting Paula. And I have no shame in admitting that. Because what I see, and I know for a fact, is that bad shit's going to happen to me. And good shit's going to happen to me. Good things will happen. And the good things usually happen because my husband and I, do something to make those things happen. We don't just sit here every day reading our Bible and money shows up. We don't sit here reading the Bible and, a new roof comes on our house. We have to work for that stuff. We have to pay for it. It just doesn't happen. Money trees don't grow in people's backyards because they pray for it. Innocent children don't survive cancer because of prayer. In fact, many of them don't survive. And the way that some people deal with the death of a child especially is that they're in a better place. Great. Do that. Feel that way. Me, I just cry a lot because I think it's very sad when a young person is taken too soon. And they did absolutely nothing to deserve it. And then again, if you think that, well, God punishes those who don't follow him, well, how come I know so many people who do not believe in God, who are horrible people, who are thriving? Well, they'll get their judgment on Judgment Day. Yeah, can I watch? But see, I'm not allowed to watch that. I'd like to see them be punished right now. People who have hurt me, people who have committed crimes, people who have murdered little children. I'd like to see them punished like now. You know, we see murderers get off on technicalities. We see people get away with stuff. We see horrific acts of terrorism. And we don't see the punishment. Most of the terrorists, they kill themselves. And we have to deal with the loss of innocent lives. And we don't have anybody to blame because you're not allowed to blame God. Well, you got to blame somebody. We're not allowed to blame guns because people tell us that it's not the guns that are bad, it's the people who use the guns that are bad. So that's my problem with Christianity and all religions, by the way, because the fanatical Islamic people want to bomb everybody and force everybody to bow down to Allah. Christians, some of them, the religious right, want the government to make laws forcing all of us to live by their Bible. There are people who will, it's funny, Bernie Sanders, if you support Bernie Sanders, well, good luck, Baruch Hashem, because he's never getting elected president. Because there are religious people, Christian right people, who will never vote for a Jewish president. Even though the president is not supposed to be making laws based on any one religion. That's the way the government works, separation church and state. But there are people out there, and I've spoken to them in person, we won't vote for a Jew, definitely not going to vote for the gay guy that just tossed his hat in the ring with his husband standing by him. He's not getting elected president. And certainly we won't ever, according to when I talk to people, they won't elect a president who doesn't go to church. They won't elect a president who isn't a Christian. And they won't even elect a president who isn't married with 2.4 children. You have to be married and you have to have kids or grandchildren, or you're not going to be president of the United States, which is supposed to be a country that has freedom of and from religion. You don't have to be a Christian to be American. And yet the Christian right wants everyone to be a Christian. They believe this is a Judeo-Christian government. And yet we bomb other governments in other countries that try to force the whole country to live by a certain religion, especially if it's Islam. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate. No one in any country should be forced to live by any religion they don't choose to believe in. And so that's my problem with all religion, to be honest with you. And organized religions, the four walls and the buildings, my problem is it costs money. And it's not supposed to cost money because Jesus didn't want it to cost money. Jesus wouldn't like that. Jesus wouldn't like the fancy $10,000 stained glass windows per pane. He wouldn't like the fancy carpeting. He wouldn't like the fancy icons. To him, those would be graven images. In some churches, they actually kiss pictures when they walk into the church. Jesus wouldn't like that. It's a picture. You see where I'm going with this, please. I'm not trying to disrespect anyone's faith. But when I hear tributes pouring in for the Notre Dame, it's like a person died. But a person didn't die. It was a building. It felt no pain. Jesus wouldn't care if the Notre Dame burned. Jesus wouldn't care about any building burning. Jesus would weep if those who believed in him were killed while the building burned. And I think we should think about that. We should also think about our obsession with watching other people's tragedies unfold in front of our eyes and rewatch them millions of times. I think we should think about that this Easter weekend. And I think if you're going to call yourself a Christian, and I don't call myself anything, I don't wear a label. I have my own spiritual beliefs that are mine. I don't force them on anyone else. I respect all my fellow human beings because to me, human beings are more important than what religion they happen to practice. I don't ask people what religion they are before I introduce myself to them or if we're going to be friends. You don't have to be a certain religion to be my friend. If you're a good human being, if you're kind to me, if you're someone I can respect and you respect me in return, we're friends. That's it. That's my only criteria. There are other people that will only be friends with people who attend the same church they attend. They only want their children to hang out with children from the same church that they attend. That's your business. Just don't force your baggage on to me. I don't have time for it. I'm not interested in it. I don't share that kind of forced religion. I don't force religion on anyone. And I don't get recruited. So don't try to recruit me. I am never going to pay to hear the Bible interpreted by someone I've never met or someone I don't know that well. I want to read the Bible. I have plenty of Bibles. I will open it up. I'll read it. If I want to talk to God, I will talk to God right here. I pray a lot. I usually pray for other people because when I pray for myself, my prayers usually aren't answered. That's okay too. I get it. But at the end of the day, I respect all religions, and I know this is a very holy weekend for all of you. I actually believe that the story of the crucifixion and the resurrection is a very beautiful story. And so I wish you all a very happy and safe Passover, Good Friday, Happy Easter. And let's remember to put things in perspective. Let's make sure that we weep for what we should weep for. Human life lost. Any human life. A gay young college student murdered because he was gay. People killed in the name of Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, any religion. Let's weep for them. Weep for the little children killed in their classrooms. Weep for the children dying of cancer. Let's put our tears where they belong. And I submit to you, we do not need to shed tears for a building. And I don't care what building it is. Unless it's our home. Unless if that building is lost, we will be on the streets. We will be displaced. Then you can weep for a building. But for churches, as that pastor so eloquently said in Louisiana, it was just a building. It wasn't the church. The church is the people. And people who worship can worship anywhere. They don't need a fancy building to do it in. Happy Easter, everybody. Political Paula, out.